going on, everybody? Jucifer here, and I'm going to talk today about booster plugs, FuelX, all these different mods, and a bunch of confusion that seems to be going on around them. I did a lot of research, talked to a lot of people, did a lot of scrolling on the forums, and consulted the oracles of the interwebs, and I was able to come up with a pretty good idea, and I will explain which one I chose and why. So stick around. If you care to, hit that subscribe button, smash the like. I definitely appreciate it. Helps me keep making these videos, keeps me motivated. And yeah, so let's get into this. So first off, open loop versus closed loop. Your ECU will listen to, in closed loop is when you're cruising along at a given speed, not changing the throttle, idling, things like that. It's going to listen to your narrowband O2 sensors on the Interceptor and Continental GTs, the 650 twins rather. I guess that applies to the Meteors now as well, and whatever else they come out with soon. Looking forward to that. So in that mode, it's going to be listening to the O2 sensors. It will be actively looking at whether you're running lean versus rich and make its corrections. It's pretty rough as far as, you know, it's just reading narrow or lean or rich. It's not going to give you a percentage like a wideband sensor would. But if the ECU is doing its job, after a 15-minute idle, after any changes to the air exhaust system, within reason, it should be able to compensate for that. Now, closed loop is when you are getting on this sucker. When you're changing your throttle position, when you're accelerating under heavy load, things like that, it's going to revert to the fuel map that's in the ECU. So it's not going to be listening to these guys anymore. It's going to be looking at the fuel map that's programmed, and it's got a whole table and everything. And that table is going to change its fuel percentage or fuel added to the mix based on the intake temperature sensor. So this is called open loop mode. Now, the booster plug works in open loop mode. It changes the intake temperature feed to the ECU and tells it that the air is approximately 10 degrees colder. I believe that's Celsius, so do the math on that for American numbers. I don't know what that is in Freedom Eagles. But when you are changing your throttle position, when you're accelerating, things like that, that's when it's going to richen up your air-fuel mixture by what they say is approximately 6%, and that is going to help your engine with lugging at low RPMs. It's going to smooth your on-off throttle response greatly. It's not going to be choppy, no herky-jerkies when you're getting on and off the throttle, especially in a corner. Really confidence-inspiring. And lastly, it's going to help out your throttle response. I don't feel like it's adding a significant amount of power on its own based on my personal experience. I guess I just gave away which one I went with. But yeah, it seems like the power band is a little bit wider. It seems like it's a little more responsive. It doesn't change the bike. It doesn't change it into a race bike. It's never going to be that. It's a classic cruising machine. That's what they're meant to be. But I feel like it gives you a little more of the engine that's there. It makes its power across a wider band, and it makes it more rideable and usable, especially low speed, things like that. Now, the FuelX works in closed loop mode. It interrupts the O2 sensors and inserts a false lean signal to make the ECU richen up the mixture. I'm not saying this is not useful to anyone, but it would only really make a difference if you have leaned out your bike to the point where it doesn't idle correctly and it is running hot. So that would have to be a massive upgrade. Like I've got exhaust tips, you know, free flowing mufflers, and the DNA snorkel delete kit, full on DNA air filter kit. And after a 15-minute idle, this ECU compensates just fine for closed loop mode. If I had gone full free flow headers, perhaps that would do it. I'm not sure what the sort of tipping point is when you would need to interrupt that signal, or even just go to a full-on power commander or programmable ECU, something like that at that point. So, without any further ado, I've already kind of told you that is what I have chosen, and that is my cardio. Not really, but it's fucking funny, right? Oops, did I say a bad word? So, In my experience, I've had this on for a couple weeks now. I've got a few miles under the belt. It really does smooth out that throttle response, that on-off. I feel like I don't have to downshift to first gear nearly as often when I'm going through a slow speed corner. I can pick back up in second when I'm running about 2,000 RPM, and it'll pick back up just fine without lugging the engine, things like that. So without further ado, let's go for a little ride on this thing, and I'll show you what it sounds like. All right.
Alright folks, leaving cycle gear, just picked up these snazzy Dianese, I don't know how to say it, but they're really comfortable. Definitely feel a little more flexible compared to my Alpenstars, but that's not what we're here to talk about today. Also picked up a cramp buster right there. I'm sure y'all are familiar. For those longer trips, it comes in handy. I've not used one before, but I'm going to give it a shot. See how I like it. Alrighty, so booster plug. Shut my lid here so you can hear me a little better. And I fear that airflow already. That is quite nice in these gloves. Alright. So I actually let off the throttle and got back on it in the middle of that corner there. It was probably pretty hard to tell because the on-off is, if I do my part, super smooth now. The booster plug has absolutely affected that because it is looking at the fuel map and looking at the intake air temperature when you are moving the throttle, on, off, accelerating, things like that. And I'm going to let the RPMs get down. We're under 3,000 and it's going to pull out of this corner like it's nothing. That is another benefit. I really am shifting less and having considerably more confidence in the lower RPMs of this bike. And that's pretty big when you're going through twisties and stuff like that. You know, less gear changes, more focusing on just body position and steering and riding and enjoying it. Alright, I'm going to get on it here a little bit. Pulls all through the rev bands considerably better. I feel like there was a couple dead spots prior to doing this mod. I think the good spots were better once I put the DNA air filter kit on and the snorkel delete, but those benefits spread across a wider range with the booster plug installed. Now this is one of my favorite little loops to cruise around here in Huntsville. It's just really pretty scenery. I'm going to try to do all this in one shot because honestly video editing is not my strong suit. If there's any editors out there, people that got some chops in the Huntsville, Alabama area and you want to come go halvesies on a channel, hit me up, let me know, because that might be pretty fun. But anyway, it's a cool bike path here. I've done that when I was doing the bicycling for St. Jude back in April. But I feel like when I'm cruising like this, the ECU's doing its job. I don't need the FuelX. It's not going to benefit me, and I don't think it's going to benefit you unless you've completely opened up the system on this bike or your Royal Enfield 650. And this goes for really bikes across the board because they operate on different principles. When I'm holding the steady throttle position, the ECU is doing its job and making sure the mixture is not too lean or too rich. It's going to be a little bit leaner than we might prefer in the long run, but it's not going to be anything close to a safety issue, and it's going to benefit fuel economy, really. When I get on it, or when I'm changing throttle positions, taking off from a slow start, things like that, that's when the 6% extra fuel, so booster plug says, kicks in and smooths things out, gives you a little better torque, just feels a little happier. So, that is why I chose the booster plug over the FuelX, and honestly why I think most people will benefit more from the booster plug versus the FuelX, unless you have done complete open headers, wide open, like straight pipes with massive just honking header pipes and no cats and, you know, all that kind of thing to where the ECU just can't cope anymore. That's when I would see the FuelX probably being something that you would want. However, if you're doing that much mods, you're going that far with it, I think you're probably already looking at a full-on custom ECU or power command or something like that already. So, that is my personal opinion. That's what old Jucifer thinks about the great booster plug versus FuelX debate, if there is one. I just think there's a lot of confusing videos, and a lot of the times you watch a video on it and it kind of seems like people are saying they do the same thing, and they really don't. Oh, listen to that. Yeah. Didn't get rid of my crackles and pops. I'm not mad about that. It just sounds nasty. But yeah, the FuelX, whether it's the Lite or the Pro, it operates on a completely different principle from the booster plug. The booster plug, sorry if my hand's getting in the way there. Booster plug, in my opinion, it's there when you want it and it's not when you don't. You know, I want that extra fuel when I'm transitioning, when I'm getting on off the gas, when I'm, you know, laying off the throttle, getting back on it in a corner, something like that. It just smooths the whole experience out. And I want it when I'm cranking it wide open and shitting it and getting it, because obviously that little bit extra torque, a little bit extra wider power band makes a little bit of difference. It just feels happier and healthier in general. This is never going to be a race bike. This is never intended to be a super fast bike. Got a little busy talking there. Sorry. But it's just a little sprightlier. It's a little peppier. I feel like when those heavy loads are happening, haha, giggity. Don't demonetize me. Not that I'm even monetized yet. My channel tiny, y'all. Subscribe! So, when the engine is under a heavy load, when you're getting it, I want it not to be worried about being leaned out, things like that. That's when you want everything in that nice rich zone protected from everything I understand. If you have different opinions, feel free to drop a comment. I learn new stuff every day. One of my previous videos, a couple guys commented, I learned a little bit about how gearing and things like that work on a bike. So, you know, I definitely appreciate everyone commenting and participating, because we're all here to learn and just be part of the two-wheel community. So, there's dude's part of the two-wheel community. Give him a wave. He didn't seem to look. Sometimes I feel guilty about the passing bicyclists and stuff, but, you know, they chose their fate. So it's a beautiful day here in northern Alabama, and I am absolutely loving how this bike is running with the booster plug installed. These takeoffs low speeds, things like that, low RPMs in particular, it just feels much stronger, less lugging. If that gets like kind of a not so happy sound when you drop the RPMs too low. It still happens, obviously, but it happens at a lower RPM significantly than it did before. So that really contributes to not needing to shift nearly as much in turns. I'm going to let it go below 3,000 right now. And if I want to, it's just going to get right back up. So, top gear pulls, things like that, when you're cruising in 6th, you really don't have to worry quite as much about dropping a gear if you need to pass, things like that. I feel like it's just got more on tap across a wider band, even if it's not significantly more than it had prior. You just have it all more, if that makes sense. Yeah, hopefully it does. Anyway, try to do a maneuver here. Touch 90, that's definitely kilometers an hour, not miles an hour, don't look. It'll get right up there. It'll keep going. I've definitely crossed over into the triple digits, and things pretty happy with it. I think I'm going to take this turn here and take you on one of my other little spots, or maybe not. Might end it here. I think I've said about all I have to say. There's quite a few benefits. It's not going to turn your Royal Enfield 650 into a race bike by any means. It's still going to be the same lovable, not overpowered, really soulful British style twin with this 270-degree crank. It's a blast to ride. It doesn't really encourage you to get that stupid. Alright, well under 2,000 here. And it just gets right up out of it. So that was, about, I got down to about 2,400 RPM there in that corner, and it just pulled itself right out. That absolutely would have lugged this thing out a touch, either in stock form or with the air filter installed in the other mods prior to putting the booster plug on. And this is one of my favorite little pretty roads. It's a little bumpy, and sometimes there's some traffic, but speedometer's shut down. Not really upset about that. Yeah, so booster plug is not a super big expenditure. I feel like if you are already doing any kind of mods to your engine, these things are lean from the factory. The mapping is not the smoothest. It's not bad. Royal Enfield did a good job, and they definitely made these very easily brought to where they ought to be, and a lot of other manufacturers have not made it quite that easy. Yeah, I rolled off and back on the throttle twice in that corner, and it was just buttery smooth. No lurching forward, no herky-jerky, nothing like that. So, yeah, this, when it was bone stock, I think it was slightly smoother than when I did the air kit on it. Once I did the air kit and had the mufflers and everything, there was definitely more top end power, but it was not as smooth and not as happy at the lower RPMs. And this booster plug has really brought it full circle, evened it out. It's got a little bit of everything now, and I feel like this bike is basically how I want it. as far as rideability, and just general, happiness between around town as well as cruising on the highway and things like that. Obviously, Royal Enfield did a fantastic job on these Interceptors. The Continentals are a gorgeous bike, but I can ride this thing for 3 hours and I'm perfectly happy, especially with this touring seat between my cheeks here, which may be the subject of the next video. But for now, I'm going to get on this one more time, getting over this hill. I did the ton there. No, I did not do the ton. I would never do that. It's still kilometers per hour. I swapped this out for a kilometer predominant speedo, so that was actually only about 60 miles an hour there. 62.5, I believe, is the equivalent of 100 kilometers per hour. Rawr. The Curry Cruiser here. I love this thing. Yeah, so that's about it. Thanks for tuning in today. Appreciate you sticking around. Hope you have enjoyed it and you have learned something. If you got any other questions or have any requests for other videos, let me know. I would be happy to. And have an awesome day. Thanks for riding with Jucifer.